this site, it's right on the edge of the road take, so it's on the western side of Cope Mountain. So it's like a finger of ground that's coming down from the mountain, heading towards the sea. You're sitting there and you just look out into Sligo Bay. It is majestic. To the north, you've got the cliffs, and then to the right, you're going up towards Glencar Valley. And then when you look above, you got the ravens, and they're circling with the updrafts from the cliffs on Cope Mountain. Absolutely stunning sight.
Here we are in Lugatober townland on the N16 road project, where test excavations by Archaeological Management Solutions uncovered the remains of a large ring ditch or prehistoric burial monument that was initially discovered by Geophysical Survey. John Channing was the site director.
To tackle the site, we dig it in segments, and we dig it that way so that when we go down, we see a section. You can see different layers, and within those layers you've lenses, so it's a way of recording it three-dimensionally. We have a series of section faces, we draw them, profiles. Then between one or two of these segments, we'll dig it crossways to get a longitudinal section. That means we're looking sideways into the ditch fills. The reason we're doing this is so we can have a very good record of exactly what is in the ditch, how it came to be there. Is it naturally hill washed in? Is it deliberately backfilled? The reason we're very interested in that is because as a site type, they have a very wide date range. It could be from 2400 BC, start of the Bronze Age, up to late Iron Age, maybe 400 AD. That's 2,800 years. And the reason that's important at that period of time is you think, well, things change. So a monument like the one we have could initially be used one way, and then 1,000 years later maybe used slightly differently. And when you look at the ditch fills, you start thinking maybe this is what's happening. Because certainly at the base of the ditch you have a certain type of fill, with some cattle bones, a few flecks of charcoal, not much else. When you go up to the mid layers, you have an awful lot of burnt bone, an awful lot of charcoal, a lot of burnt stone. So you think there's something clearly very different going on. And again, when you look at the way the layers are coming in, you think that the lower layers are built up over a long period of time, gradually washing in. And then later on, there's deliberate redeposition, maybe where there's the remnants of cremation pyre, perhaps. Now, if that's deliberate deposition, and perhaps it's from a funeral pyre, well, that's a very different funerary rite to what might have been happening 1,000 years in the past. You know, at the start of the monument's use, when you don't have that, you don't have the charcoal, you don't have the burnt bone, you have some animal bone, cattle bone. And then that makes you think, if there's a change of burial rite or treatment of the dead, does that somehow reflect society at the time? And then we'll, of course, take that information and match it then in with information from sieving, from sampling, from C14 dating, and even looking at the finds themselves.
While we don't know when the monument was originally constructed, dates returned from 2 soil layers within the ditch show that it was the focus of activity during the first 2 centuries AD. It was during this period that 2 beautiful blue glass beads were deposited within the ditch.
There's a site there that's outside the road take, and it's another barrow. When you go to it, you see a clump of trees beside a field boundary. But when you look into it, you can see a circular fosse or ditch, and then inside that, you have a low bank, and inside that again, a low mound. And if you look at the size of it, it's very tempting to speculate that that is exactly what our site was. So in other words, outer ditch, inner bank, inner mound. So I would think that would be our site type. It's a memory to someone, or some people, or some clan.
About 1 kilometre to the south of Lugatober, in the townland of Castlegal, 2 further ring ditches were discovered on the project. The sites in Castlegal were identified by Geophysical Survey and excavated by a team under the direction of Dennis McKee.
I was delighted we got to excavate 2 beautiful ring ditches as part of the Sligo project. They were located about 60 metres apart, and they were only about 350 metres from the major palisaded enclosure excavated by James McKee. The 2 ring ditches were quite similar in shape and form. They're about 7 metres in diameter. So nice little ring ditches, quite typical of the class and the form. I suppose another interesting thing about barrows and ring ditches certainly is not a huge amount of evidence for funerary activity on site. Now we should say the soil conditions wouldn't be conducive to the survival of a lot of bone anyway. On Castlegal 3 we had 2 features containing bone. One was a pit and a cluster sort of to the east of the site, and then maybe of more interest there was a larger pit very, very close to the ring ditch that contained a lithic feature and a larger amount of bone and a lot of evidence of burning in terms of charcoal.
The 2 ring ditches produced a small number of finds such as flint scrapers and sherds of prehistoric pottery. The ring ditch at Castlegal 2 appears to have been the focus of activity during the 14th and 12th century BC, while earlier activity at the site is indicated by a possible hearth that contained charred barley grain dating to the early Bronze Age. This also tells us that barley was being cultivated by local farmers at this time. The ring ditch at Castlegal 3 has been dated to around the mid-2nd millennium BC, so appears to be slightly older than the nearby example at Castlegal 2. There is also evidence for later activity at Castlegal 3, indicated by a pit which dates from the 8th to the 6th century BC.
I guess the significance of the ring ditches is greater when they're considered in their landscape context, because we mentioned obviously that the major palisaded enclosure is only about 300 metres away.
The dating of the palisaded enclosure shows that this was an Iron Age monument, built and used during the last few centuries BC. The results of our investigations on the N16 road project are beginning to shine a light on the lives of our ancient ancestors in this small part of County Sligo. And as we continue to study the excavated materials and finds, we hope that these fascinating sites will give up many more of their secrets.